This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast.
Welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, where we help women remove the overwhelm of living their most holistic life. This is the place to find evidence-based nutrition tactics, healthy lifestyle and wellness tips, abundance mindset, and easily implementable low-tox living strategies so you can rise up to your full potential and protect your family's health. I'm your host, Stacey Heine, certified holistic nutritionist and better living advocate. Now, let's get empowered with some simple swaps that make a big impact for optimal wellness.
Welcome to episode 53 of the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Today, my guest is Ashley Kitchens, and she just so happens to be from a small town here in Indiana, just like me. But a fun fact about her is that she grew up on an Angus cattle farm. And as you might guess, meat and dairy were a really big part of her life. Unfortunately, so were gastrointestinal issues like chronic constipation. For years, she was told to manage her issues with medication instead of considering the food that she was putting into her body. Ashley earned her Master's of Public Health and Nutrition from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and became a registered dietitian in 2012. But even after that, her issues didn't completely go away. It wasn't until she personalized her diet and her own eating habits and noticed a significant change. So for her, that meant transitioning to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. I cannot wait for you to hear Ashley. She is so informative, but also hilarious. And I really encourage you to go follow her at Plant Centered Nutrition on Instagram. And before we get into today's episode, I want to talk about today's podcast sponsor, which is Ana Luisa Jewelry. I am very, very excited because this is our first podcast sponsor. And I don't know if you know, but the fashion industry contributes largely to greenhouse gases. And the global greenhouse gases make up more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. And that is something that really makes me sad. And I try not to support fast fashion as much as possible, but I do the best I can, right? And as a vegan, for the planet, the animals, and the health, this really speaks to me. So when I choose who I am buying from, I always look for ways to be as responsible as I can. And that's why I'm really, really happy to have found Ana Luisa Jewelry. They are climate neutral certified with 0% impact on water use footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. And they practice circularity, which means that they recycle and donate so many of their materials and products. And I'm just really, really excited. I want to tell you about my two favorite things that I got from them. The marble blue earrings, the Hannah marble blue earrings, and the paisley ring are gorgeous and would make perfect gifts that are eco-friendly and sustainable. So thank you to Ana Luisa Jewelry. We really look forward to partnering with you in the future. All right, here's the episode. I will see you on the flip side.
So Ashley Kitchens, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Stacey. I'm so excited to be here.
I am really excited to be here. I found you on Instagram, and you and your energy is amazing. And you make me crack up on a normal basis with your hilarious reels and just the message that you portray. Okay, where do we even start with this conversation? Because I feel like we've got to backtrack. Tell me first about you and what you currently are doing with your life, and then we're going to go back to how it all started.
Ooh, okay. So currently what I do with my life is I'm a plant-based dietitian. I know we'll talk about how I got into that realm, but what I do is I work one-on-one with clients virtually all over the world. And I also do group coaching. I have a podcast. Like basically what you're on a mission to do is just spread the love of plants, plant-based eating, showcasing that it can be fun, funny, and like really approachable for anybody.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. I did not know you had a podcast. I now have something else to listen to. This is amazing, incredible.
Yes.
What's the podcast called?
It's called Plant-Centered and Thriving.
Oh, good. Love it. We've got to add that thriving because a lot of people, they might think that this plant-based lifestyle is something that they can't thrive on because do you agree with me that a lot of the times one of the main things that people, encounter, Ash, is when they're transitioning to this type of lifestyle, they are just not simply eating enough?
Oh yeah. And I've been there before too. So I can completely relate to that.
Yeah.
And there is, especially when you're transitioning there's a lot more planning that's involved, especially to make sure that you're getting everything that you need and that you're happy. And like we said, thriving, like getting all the nutrients, the micronutrients, the macronutrients, so that everything does go smoothly, because feeling good is part of this process as well. That's why a lot of us do it, because we feel so good.
So yeah, I mean, seriously, life-changing for me, like 100% feel like I'm 10 years younger than I was when I started this, which was over a decade ago. Like I feel that way in my body. I feel like I felt when I was like in junior high. Like it's just been totally life-changing in terms of how I feel within my body. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, where did this all start with you? When did you transition? When did you decide to go into dietetics? Where did that all start?
I decided I'd always really liked food. And so I was like, oh, there's this thing called a dietitian out there. Maybe I'll become a dietitian and then my world will really revolve around food even more so than it already does. And so I started to pursue a career in nutrition, dietetics, and I was not plant-based at the time. In fact, I had really never met a vegan or a vegetarian. Like it was completely foreign to me. I grew up in an incredibly small town on an Angus cattle farm in Indiana. So that way of living I just had never heard of it. Like part of my life was centered around eating lots of meat, drinking a lot of cow's milk, that type of thing. And so when I entered this world of nutrition and when I became a dietitian, I didn't even learn that much about it, Stacey, in school. Yeah. I didn't really learn much about plant-based eating, about veganism, about using food as a way to like help us feel better. It was all about managing disease and symptoms after someone had already had these issues. And I was personally struggling with my own issues. I had a lot of GI issues growing up and I was still having them into my mid-20s. And I felt like I came to this fork in the road where I was like, okay, I have two paths I can go down, because I'd spent most of my life on medication, managing chronic constipation and just a bunch of GI symptoms that I had. And I had this really bad experience with the medication. So I was like, I cannot keep doing this, because I'm telling my clients, who have GI issues, oh, well, eat more fiber, because that's what I was taught, drink more water, move your body, all these things. And I was doing the same thing and I was still feeling miserable. And it came to this point where I was like, well, maybe food does have something to do with this. Mm-hmm. And so I started exploring more of what it would look like to kind of change some things around. I just happened to come across like Forks Over Knives way back when it first came out. And that documentary just blew my mind. And so I started incorporating some more plants and immediately noticed that I started feeling better. Oh, and it took me a few years to fully transition, because again, it was so new to me, but the more I did it, the better I felt. And I tell everyone probably similar to you, like I just never looked back, because I just started feeling better than I ever had in my entire life. It's like, well, I'm not going back to the old way of eating. Like I felt horrible back then. So
Right. Wow. Okay. So that's where it started for you. That's where all of the plants, came into your life. How did you transition, Ashley? Were you, for me, it was, not overnight. I mean, my decision had been made overnight, I think subconsciously, from a documentary that I had watched that really just had to do with the animals, not even about health. And then like fast forward a few years later, I was totally plant-based. But did it start with dairy for you? Like, was it meat that you gave up first? Like, where was that at? for you?
It was. Yeah. So this was back in 2012. I noticed dairy was one of those things that really bothered my stomach. And how I had never really heard about that until then is still wild to me, but really no one had said that. No one told my parents, growing up that could potentially be an issue. And so immediately I removed cow's milk from my diet, and that made a significant difference. And that was a pretty easy switch, even back then when there weren't a whole lot of plant milks out there. And then even though, sorry, mom and dad, even being raised on an Angus cattle farm, I gave up red meat almost immediately as well and noticed a big difference there. And it wasn't so much of like giving up those foods. It's just like the more I added in these other foods, I was like, well, I don't even really want to eat those foods anymore. Because again, I just started making that deeper connection with what I was eating, what I was putting into my body, and how I was feeling. Like finally, I felt like the veil was like taken back away, and I was able to kind of make that connection on a deeper level than I ever had before.
Good. So let's go back a little bit with you growing up on the farm. What is that like now? Now that you're plant-based? And because I think that that's another obstacle that people face when it comes to transitioning to just a healthier lifestyle in general. Our environment has so much to do with our long-term success, the decisions that we make, the confidence that we have in these decisions that we're making for our life and our body. So what does that look like for you? Is that difficult, or is everything, peaceful?
I will say it's mostly peaceful now, and I'll tell you why. But in the beginning, it was definitely, like you said, a struggle, because when I'd since moved away, and my parents had actually moved off of the farm, which helped. But when I would go back home, it would be the same thing. We'd eat casseroles, have meat-centered meals and things like that. And so it really took me having a lot of one-on-one conversations with people that I would be dining with, just to let them know, like, hey, this isn't really how I'm eating. And Stacey, it took so much trial and error because I had no idea what I was doing back then. But I think what was so great is the people that I would talk to, especially when I came back home, family in particular, they were willing to listen to why I was doing what I was doing. And they knew growing up how I felt and all the issues that I had. So I think they were excited that I was actually starting to feel better. And I think that was more of a highlight than like, oh, well, Ashley's no longer eating this way.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really, really helpful. But what ended up happening was, and this is jumping to why it's peaceful now, is my parents were having high cholesterol and some health issues. And so for one of my birthdays, I said, Mom and Dad, will you please just try this way of eating for me for 3 months? I don't want a gift. I don't want anything. Like, please just try it. And we took their labs before. We took it 3 months after them going plant-based, and their labs improved significantly. Cholesterols, like both of them, plummeted. They felt better. They had more energy, and they're like, all right, well, maybe there is something to this lifestyle that you've been telling us about for many, many years. And so that's why it's more peaceful now. It's because they experienced it firsthand. And even though they aren't fully plant-based, they still, us being able to relate to one another on, what it's like to eat that way. And their understanding has definitely deepened, which has been wonderful. So,
oh my gosh, that is a serious dream of mine. Mom, Daddy, if you hear this, just knocking on the micro. If you hear this, Mom, the butter, not to be awkward, but like, that's my dream, because I just feel like, And a client of mine, like, she has this dream as well. Like she got certified as a nutritionist, like just to try to help her family. And I'm like, look, you got to start with you. That's really all that we can control. But Ashley, I really like that idea of like, can you do this as a gift for me? Like,
really,
but you could have potentially saved their life, this is incredible. So, and most people feel that instant feeling of feeling better. And that is massive. So, okay. When you started eating this way, Ashley, was it still, you said 2003 or 2002 or something like that?
2012.
Sorry. Okay. That would be 20 years ago. What did it look like for you with protein? Were we still freaking out about like combining at that time? I know like back in like 2004, this the food combining, like you must eat the beans with the rice if you want to get the complete protein. Yeah. Like feeling like a robot that way. Were you worried about that?
Okay, that's a great question because when I first started transitioning, it's hard to know where to get your information from. And that's another thing that I really struggled with was like, okay, well, what's actually reliable when it comes to plant-based eating and what is just like stuff back from the 70s that we thought was true, but actually is totally a myth, like combining proteins. And so for me, yeah, it was still definitely a thought in my mind of like, okay, I need to make sure everything is like, quote, perfectly balanced, to make sure I'm getting everything that I need. I'm not deficient in anything. And it was nice because I did have that background in nutrition. So I felt like I was able to kind of piece some things together. But at the same time, I felt like a lot of what I was reading online definitely made it a lot more complicated than it needed to be. And there is also just a lot of misinformation that I know now that I didn't know back then that I just kind of had to learn as I went as well.
Yeah. So when you go to teach clients, like, is there a specific approach that you have that, you're like, let's get X, Y, and Z. Let's, make sure that our plate looks this certain way. Like, how does that look like for you? How are you how are you helping clients do this whole thing?
I approach it in a gentle way. So a lot of it when I'm working with clients one-on-one, it has to fit into their lifestyle, wherever they're living, what they have access to. And so making it definitely incredibly attainable wherever they're at in the world. But also too, yes, making sure one thing that I always ask is like, hey, what's like a typical day look like for you? That way I have at least a general idea of everything that they're getting. And then I also like to stay updated on their blood work and their interactions with their doctors or PCPs and making sure that everything's going on there. And also too, just reviewing, their blood work and taking a look at what medications and supplements they're on, just to, again, get the whole picture, because it's great to look at a plate and be like, oh yeah, you're getting everything you need, but it's always nice to have some of those numbers and some of the clinical work as well.
Absolutely. That's great that you're able to guide people that way. It's clinical, but it's not. So let's talk about that. When you started with dietetics, what did you do? Did you go right into private practice, or did you go and work at a hospital? What were you doing?
I did. I worked at a psych hospital.
Oh, wow.
And it was incredibly challenging from a nutrition standpoint, because as you can imagine, nutrition was not the focus. Like their mental health, getting patients stable, that was the primary focus, which I completely understand. But it was hard from a dietitian's perspective, and that the food that we were feeding these patients, these clients, the foods that were in the vending machines were really not healthful. They were not helping fuel what I felt was their health, their mental health, their mental wellness, because that's a piece of the puzzle as well. I mean, medication, yes, plays a massive role in meeting with doctors, but nutrition is a piece as well. And I just felt like we were, to speak candidly, underserving them in that area.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, for sure. I mean, probably lots of sugar, oil, and salt, and that's super disruptive to the body. I mean, to the brain.
Yeah.
That's not going to help our brain. Especially these gut, inflammatory foods probably aren't helping our brain. So that would have been really hard. So when you were there, you decided, look, I'm going to branch off and do my own thing.
Yeah, Stacey, I was there for a year, and I literally thought I had made a mistake in my career choice, because I was truly miserable. I just felt like, I came into the field wanting to make a difference, wanting to make an impact, and I felt like that wasn't happening. And thankfully, I had a door was open to me that I could do consulting and work in long-term care and nursing homes. And I've always loved older adults, and so I took that opportunity, and I worked in nursing homes for 7+ years, and I loved it because I was able to develop long-term relationships with patients and really just be able to see changes being made and being able to just develop that rapport and to just share information, especially if people are open to eating more plant-based, or even just working with the facilities and trying to change what they were offering to the patients.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. But while I was doing that, it gave me the flexibility to start the business that I have now, which I was so, so grateful for. And about almost 2 years ago is when I went full-time with what I'm doing now.
So good. So good. Okay. So you help people transition to plant living, if that's what their goal is, right? Or you just
Right.
help them in general get their food and their blood work and their life probably in order. Are there other things, Ashley, that you feel is kind of part of your approach? I don't know, maybe like in a holistic way that pulls everything together in terms of like lifestyle wellness that you're helping your clients, patients go through?
So when I also first started this journey, like I said, I didn't really learn a whole lot about plant-based eating, and I didn't really learn a whole lot about intuitive eating or mindful eating, or, basically recovering and healing from maybe years of dieting or decades of dieting. And that's something that I've really spent a lot of time and energy studying and researching, is our relationship with food and how that also has a profound impact on our health and our wellness, and just how we view ourselves and how we even look at food every single day when it's in front of us. And so that's something that I heavily bring into my practice. It's not just the plant-based side of things, but also to a lot of the clients that I work with. We work on recovering and healing from years of diet culture and dieting and things like that. So I feel like for my approach, particularly, that really ties everything together when it comes to living a healthful, like fun, enjoyable plant-based lifestyle.
Hey friend, before we get too far into this episode, I want to be sure you know about how the environment plays a role on your overall health. For over a decade, I've been learning so much about the lack of health regulation in the personal care and food industries, and that's actually one of the reasons why I started this show. You deserve to know how to protect you and your family from unwanted body burden, and I share further information about how to make better choices and vote with your dollar in our private Facebook community called The Urban Pharmacy. On that note, I want to let you know about one of the easiest ways that we've switched to safer, and that's through my favorite clean beauty brand called Beauty Counter. Your skin is your largest organ, and what you put on it every day matters a lot. And with a low carbon footprint, cruelty-free formulations, and high-performing results, I haven't found a better beauty brand than Beauty Counter in over 5 years of working with this mission-driven brand. To learn more and shop clean, head to mybetterbeauty.com. So do you teach people about the importance of activity? I know that you do CrossFit, don't you?
I do, yes.
You are a CrossFitter. So do you help people? Like, do people come to you and that see that you do CrossFit and they're like, look, I want to do these high intensity activities. Like, can you help me in terms of like how to get my diet in order when it comes to like sporting and, like athletic endeavors?
I am incredibly passionate about, like, obviously movement being a part of just our wellness journey too. And because I do CrossFit and I'm really immersed in that community, I do enjoy working with athletes every once in a while. I will say that's not even though I've done CrossFit for about 9 years now, it's not really my area of expertise, like fitness, nutrition, and plant-based eating, even though I live it myself. And so honestly, I often refer certain people out, but I've worked with some amazing athletes and helping them, especially the ones that want to actually kind of steer away from like counting macros or calories, because maybe they've done it for a really long time, and just try to eat more intuitively and also fuel their, physical activity. I love working with athletes like that. And I've worked with some amazing clients who have recovered from just maybe being obsessive over counting every single thing that goes into their mouth, and healing from that and just trying to eat more intuitively and still be able to perform at a high level, which is really cool.
That's so good. That's so good. So speaking of intuitive eating, this kind of goes along with intuitive eating, but maybe not. Here's the deal. I want to ask you, Ashley, what is your thought? And we won't talk even about like the animal keto, but like plant keto. Or high carb, low fat. Like, do you think that people can thrive with both, or do you see people, leaning toward one or the other, just more than one, like more than the other? Do you see that happening?
I do see it happening. And before I even answer that, I'll say I did a plant-based keto. Oh, this is so embarrassing to admit. Like a couple years ago, I did a video on it because I was doing a lot of meal prepping videos. I was like, oh, I'm going to do plant-based keto and showcase that. And it would end up being like one of my most top viewed videos. And I had no idea that it was like a thing. It was not sustainable for me. I did it for one day and I was like, I can't meal prep this way, but it was definitely fun to just give it a try and showcase it and give other people ideas.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to like different types of plant-based eating, it really is up to the individual to figure out what works best for them. I really try to come from a place of like empowering people to make the decisions. And then if they don't work, then okay, well, we know to pivot and try something else. But I think it's always, I mean, not that everything is worth trying, but sometimes it can be helpful to just give it a try, to get it out of your mind, especially if it's in a healthful approach, like not a restrictive or like I have to change my body type approach. I think sometimes it can be worth trying.
Yeah. I just, some people feel well with like the high fat. And I'm like, look, if you're going to do that, like, let's just make it plants so that it's bound to fiber and there's at least that, right?
Yes.
So,
yep.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. So what does a normal day look like for you of eating? Everybody eats differently. So let's just preface that, you guys. Maybe even Ashley was going to say that, but what does it look like for you, on a typical day?
On a typical day, so that my days, obviously, I think everyone's like, it looks different than what it used to. But now, right now I'm obsessed with tofu scramble. Like I get on these breakfast kicks where I could eat the same thing for literally, Stacey, years.
Oh, same.
And so
we do
right now,
we really do. We go through breakfast waves.
Yes. So a couple of years ago, it was oatmeal. And right now it just happens to be tofu scramble with kale and sun-dried tomatoes. And sometimes like this morning we had roasted potatoes and I think I did like a Beyond sausage, just something else to kind of throw in there. And it's delicious. I still haven't perfected my tofu scramble recipe, but that's basically what I'm eating every day now. And I feel so good. So I love eating that.
Okay.
And I think because I'm also home during the day now, all the time, I used to prep lunch religiously when I worked and was on the road all the time. But now I don't prep lunch. I just prep breakfasts and dinners for the week. So lunches are kind of a free for all. I'll do kind of, whatever I have in my pantry or in my fridge, something typically pretty easy. And I love smoothies. I really, truly do enjoy them. So typically it's just some sort of like smoothie that always has greens in it because I love greens. And then dinners, like this week, for example, we're doing a like sweet potato, kale, instant pot, like stew that we're going to have for the week with some like artisan bread, and some different things. So yeah.
Yum. Okay. So going back to the tofu scramble, here's a fun thing that I've been adding: some tomato powder and celery powder, because celery tends to be a little bit salty. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
And I personally don't cook with salt. I just feel better that way. So that's just me. But, of course you can add the coconut aminos or whatever, the liquid amino, whatever you're doing, salt. But so I'm liking the celery powder, and tomato powder adds a good depth of flavor to the tofu scramble. And then a little bit of, like shiitake mushroom powder has been adding good depth. So,
oh my gosh. Ooh, I'm going to try that.
Yeah. So get yourself some tomato powder, because that's kind of life-changing, by the way, like for soups. I mean, it adds really good flavor, just like a sun-dried tomato would, right? Like, you just have to scoop it. Okay. So let's talk about the Instant Pot. Let's talk about your top must-haves for the kitchen. I mean, do you feel like people need an Instant Pot? Has it been life-changing for you like it has been for me?
Okay, I'm glad that you said that, because yes, it has. I use my Instant Pot all of the time. And I think part of it is because I also eat so many rice and beans. I think before I used to like turn up my nose, like, I'm not gonna be that plant-based eater that eats lots of rice and beans, but then I love it. It's so good. It's so easy, and it's incredibly affordable. And so, oh my goodness, I use it multiple times a week. That and my Vitamix, I use probably almost every single day, like a high-powered blender. Those two things, I don't want to say I can't live without them, but I really do enjoy having them in my kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, and when you're cooking a whole, like if you want a kaboka squash, you just pop it in and you hit pressure cook, walk away for 13 minutes, and it's done when you come back. Like, hello. I mean, you can put that in the oven, but it's going to take like 3 times as long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do your beans? Like, do you do beans from dried?
I do. I do a mixture, but yes, I like them from dried.
So yeah, we do a mixture too. It's just kind of like whatever we have time for. And have you ever tried to do dried beans and rice at the same time? That was just kind of a random question, but like,
no,
I don't know if that would work. Like, would the rice get like uber mushy and then the beans?
Probably. Yeah, I would imagine so.
Something to think about. Okay. So what are your top few things that you like to do in the Instant Pot?
Ooh, so definitely steel cut oats. I love like prepping some steel cut oats for the week in my Instant Pot. I love doing anything like soup or stew related, or anything like you said, like any sort of like squash or something that I know is going to take like an hour, maybe 2 hours in the oven, like just something that I can throw into my Instant Pot and actually walk away. And I know it's going to be done pretty quickly. Anything rice and beans. I just feel like I cook everything in there. I mean,
I know it
like,
goes so fast.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So worth it. I mean, hummus, like I'll make a big batch of chickpeas in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything.
I know. So, and then you can make like blondies. You can make blondies from the chickpeas. I mean, like guys, just cook all the chickpeas. You'll be like set for the week. It's so convenient. You don't have to wait like hours for it to boil in your Dutch oven. I think it's most well worth investment for sure. Walk us through the steel cut oats situation. So you're not doing rolled oats. You're doing the real deal steel cut, something that I used to eat back in the day when I read something about like some macrobiotic book. It was like after I had read The Kind Diet, which is what Alicia Silverstone's book is. That was like that was when it all started for me. And then she was referencing this woman that she was influenced by that wrote this book about, like, she taught her all about macrobiotics and getting the whole grain and, you know, not counting macros like we're talking about. Not like what Ashley was talking about earlier, like counting macros like fat, protein, and carbs. Macrobiotic eating is like a whole different level. It's like a lot of like miso and green leafies and your whole grains and just like umeboshi plum vinegar. It was totally some new recipes that I had never seen anyways. In the book, she was like, you need to do the steel cut oats for so many different reasons. And I really got on those for a long time. And then I got off of them. Convince me otherwise. Convince me to get back on. Convince me to get back on the real deal. How do you cook them in the Instant Pot?
It is so easy. I think that's also why I like cooking them in the Instant Pot, because it's so much quicker, like we said, with anything else. So I throw them in the Instant Pot. I do like, let's say I typically do 2 cups because I'm cooking them for the week. And then I'll do 6 cups of water. So 3 cups of water per cup of oats. Okay. And then I typically will add things like I'll add like some pumpkin or maybe like a little bit of coconut milk or coconut water or some spices, but tighten the lid, set it to 3 minutes, literally just 3 minutes. Okay. And then when the timer goes off, I let it come down to pressure, which is about 20 minutes, and then take it off and then give it a stir and it's ready to go. They're so easy. And the reason I like steel cut oats is just because I love the texture of them and they're hearty and they hold up throughout the week versus like regular rolled oats.
Okay. I really should try that. I really should get back on the whole thing. So you've convinced me. I'm going to do that. And you can do savory applications with oats too. Do you ever do savory applications?
I've tried it a couple times, and I think it's because I love the sweet aspect of oats so much. It kind of threw me off. And I live in the South, and so if we're gonna do anything savory, we'll do some grits. Have it that way. Oh, they're so good. So
have you ever done instant pot grits? Is this a thing? Do you ever do that?
I have not. I always do them on the stovetop. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're so easy. I feel like the stovetop would be fine. Okay. Ashley, before we wrap it up, give us some more food inspiration. Like for the people that just really want to start exploring more plants, maybe not, do anything that's too uber harsh to their gut. Like, going from a steak into potato to like a massive salad situation, right? Like what few meal ideas can you give our listeners to make a transition that is delicious and approachable?
One of the main things I recommend is when you're wanting to transition to eating more plants, if you have a favorite dish that you grew up with, mine, for example, was enchiladas, like searching for a new recipe. And one thing that I did for the first time, I was like, well, instead of ground beef enchiladas, I'm going to try plant-based enchiladas and let's see what comes up. And a couple of just fantastic recipes came up of ingredients that I was pretty familiar with, like sweet potatoes. It still had the enchilada sauce. I could still use the same enchilada sauce that my mom used, but it was like a familiar recipe, but it also had like a plant twist, which was kind of nice. So that's something that I recommend, is just searching for recipes that you're familiar with, but have like a plant-based twist on them, whether it's one ingredient or several ingredients.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
And then two, when it comes to like shopping for new recipes and going to the grocery store and just having more plans, one thing I always recommend is just maybe go to the grocery store when it's not super busy and allow yourself some extra time to just walk around the produce section and maybe just check out some things. You don't have to buy them, but just look at some things maybe you haven't really even looked at before. I know when I first went plant-based, I was going into sections of the grocery store that I had never been before. And it was kind of cool just to see what's out there and read what some of the ingredients are and see if it was something that I actually wanted to put in my cart and take home with me and give a try.
Yeah, that's so fun. And like going and maybe just buying some, new fruits and maybe incorporating that and just that's really fun. I like that tip. I like that tip a lot. That extra time, explore, that's kind of just like connecting with your food. I think that's something that we're missing so much of these days. Everything is so fast. Everything is DoorDashed and just getting in the kitchen. Okay. All right, friend. Hey, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up? Because I need to ask you the question I ask everybody and go on from there.
Okay. I'm kind of nervous.
No.
No, I think especially if you're starting out on your plant-based journey, is to really just take your time and don't feel like you have to put yourself in a box or you have to fit this quote, perfect plant-based lifestyle. Really figure out what approach is going to work best for you and what's going to be sustainable for you in the long run. Because I think that's really important too, is to not look at it as a fad diet or something that you have to do to restrict yourself, but something that is actually really exciting and fun and can be enjoyable and can be a huge benefit to your health, which is one of the most important things that we have on this earth.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it so much. Okay. So where can we find you? Tell us that.
You can find me. I'm most active on Instagram, which is at Plant Centered Nutrition.
Awesome. And you guys, you have to follow Ashley. She's so funny and so informative. You just give all these awesome golden nuggets and it's just amazing. So, okay. The question that I ask everybody, Ashley, is what does holistic living mean to you?
Ooh, I would say, this is just right off the bat, that it really is like a mind, body, soul connection, that it goes so much deeper than just what's on the surface. And I think that's something that I've realized over time is growing up and even into my 20s, I had such a disconnect from my body, how I was feeling, what I was putting into my mouth, and how that was having an effect on how I was feeling. So that's what I would say, is that it goes so much deeper than what you would think. And it's just this beautiful connection that you have, not just with yourself, but I feel like also too with the earth, the food that we're eating, and even the people that we're surrounding ourselves with.
100%. Oh, I love it. Perfect. Okay. That is the perfect ending to an amazing episode. You guys go follow Ashley, enjoy following her and getting inspired. Click on her links to work with her if you need more guidance. And Ashley, thank you so much for your time, my friend, and we will see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
I'm over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of The Urban Pharmacy. For today's show notes, head on over to theurbanpharmacy.com and be sure to join us inside our private Facebook group called The Urban Pharmacy, where we share inspiration, live trainings, and holistic living tips to help you build community and the healthy lifestyle that you've always wanted. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Before we connect again on the next show, follow me on Instagram at The Urban Pharmacy. That's urban with an H and pharmacy with an F. And I can't wait to hear your wellness journey as we get to know each other better. You know, there's truly no better time than now to level up your life. And I am so proud of you for showing up today. Until next time, be well, Health Crusader.